This is Teshosam. It means the wind that blows your hair back. Kwekwe is a little sandy beach. That's Gibson's beach. T-Squat is Paul River, the shortest river was anyway. T-Squat. Not big river, but strong river because it hits the bottom so hard. Kuthaiskan, a rock at the mouth. And Kwakunes, I guess, Stillwater, the orca whales used to stop by in that bay, so they called it Kwakunes. Sayayin is Texada. That means the end of the island. Places like that, so you could go on and on.
We were just a little Indian band on the coast that nobody ever heard from. We were very quiet, very tolerant, not aggressive at all. And nobody ever heard of Sliammon before. We've raised our profile, we've raised our status, and we've made our voice heard. And if nothing else, that's a good thing for our people, that at least we're being recognized, that there are rights in our territory that can't be taken away by anybody else. They have to be accommodated.
Our rights and title exist throughout our territory, and an agreement has never been reached with government as to how they come to claim interest in our territory as well. And so what we're trying to do in treaty is resolve that issue and have our rights and our title, I guess, expressed through the treaty in a way where we reached agreement with government to be very clear on what it is that the Sliammon people have in terms of rights and title.
My mom wasn't really good at English, but she knows like the whole language. Like she can speak fluently. So I have to kind of keep up with her when she's talking to the elders.
Tla'amin, but I guess they English or they non-native couldn't write Tla'amin. Yeah, there wasn't a Tla. That's how it became Sliammon. Otherwise, it was Tla'amin.
We are a strong nation. We're one of the leading tables in the treaty process.
The Sliammon people, as with any First Nations people, if you ask them who they are, it's about their relationship to their lands and their territory. If you go around our territory and you look at places that are important to us, look at things like petroglyphs, which people have graffitied all over, burial sites where our ancestors lie, and people intruding on those burial sites, those sacred areas, fishing grounds that are no longer there. You look at those kinds of things, and then I think it gives you a different perspective as to why we need to get involved in stewardship of our lands and resources. And as scary as it may be, we need to be able to do it to the standard that meets our needs, as well as a standard that is above and beyond what government does. So I think it's a big challenge, but one that we have to face, because it's about who we are.
You were taught from a very young age how to respect nature, how to read the weather,
how to travel safely. Our people traveled with canoes to get to point A to point B, and it was always safe because we just didn't take chances. My grandparents didn't take chances when to travel.
We had to learn how to use an axe just in case we got stuck, somewhere on the coast here, which was easy when the winds start to blow. Sometimes it doesn't give you any warning. So if we're stuck someplace, we gotta know how to start a fire. We gotta know how to place the rocks and stuff so we can cook. And I had one brother, and he got his time at doing dishes. He got his time at washing clothes because my mom always said, you might be alone somewhere and you'll starve to death if you don't know how to cook.
There's nothing to do in those days. All we have to do is work. Get ready in the morning, go out early, and help the old people, help other people that are working down the beach or whatever they're doing, you go help them. That's what we were told to do, is to help the people.
Your neighbors and everybody knew you and took care of you, and we were so fortunate that way, I guess. If they were out on the boat and kids were out on the boat, somebody was looking after you. If we were out in the forest picking berries or digging roots or something, there was always elders around to keep a close eye out so that you're not badly injured, or anywhere we went, we seemed to have people around us, like babysitting, I guess, these days, but we really didn't have a name for it. We just knew that someone was there. I always felt safe.
I always remember my great uncle, Sandy Timothy. His name was Maxima. I would go with him to go and get water. So we'd gather our containers, put them in a canoe, and he'd row over there. And I'm sitting there, I'm helping row, and he'd say, "Oh, it's just around the point." We'd get to that point. "Oh, it's just around the next point." So we're about 3 points over, and it's still, we're still going. And during that trip, he would be telling stories. He'd be telling stories about different things. And so that was my classroom. That was where you learned. So to me, that was enjoyable.
At a very, young age, I remember my dad bringing me over to Harwood. We would fish over there. Like the old-timers, I call them the old-timers. Some of them are no longer with us. I remember them over there, and I really enjoyed fishing, and sometimes we would sit on the beach around the fire and just talk, and those are the memories I really enjoyed.
We did everything they did. That was our schooling. If they went fishing, we went with them. They showed us how to clean fish and how to cook it and put it away if we could when we got home.
That's how I learned, watching my mom and my auntie doing the baskets. So that's how I remember I grew up for everything what my parents and my grandparents were doing. So that's why I remember everything. That's how I learned to go dig roots and get the sticks and the bark for a basket. I followed them when they go and gather those things. So she said you'll remember all these things and learn. She said there's always be a learn in every word when whatever you do.
So no matter what kind of work there was, the younger ones at a real early age were taught how to do it, showed how to do it. So we just grew up knowing a lot of things with no books or pencils or anything.
My mother and stepfather were spirit dancers, so we traveled around quite a bit through the winter throughout Washington to attend dances, powwows, I guess you'd call them. And I can remember just Mom and them saying, you know, you and your sister go sleep in the car, because they'd be packing everything, and we'd wake up in a new place, you know, maybe every 5 or 6 months we were moving. I think a lot of the kids were the same as us. We were like backseat kids. We went everywhere with our parents. Wherever we were was always by the water. I can't imagine living anywhere where there is no water. By rivers, big rivers. I can remember swimming in the summertime and the water being cold enough to leave the pop and the bologna and everything in it to keep it cold. And you know, so they were always really cool places to me.
Go on the shallow side.
Oh, right there's a few.
There's a
yeah.
Yeah, there's a
Oh, there's one right on that rock.
There's a little patch over here. Hey, there's a rock there.
There's more. Go down.
Go
down
again.
Go
further. Go again.
Okay, take a deep breath and go down.
My first memories of contact wasn't great for us as a people. We were very, very segregated. It was against the law for us to go into town unless you were going to the store, unless you're going shopping. You just didn't go to town. And the white people were not allowed to come to the village. I remember my uncle, Jack, and his cousin married into a non-native. And she had a son, his name was Jack as well. And they were really good buddies, they were cousins. But they were not allowed to associate with one another. And I always remember the story about him that Uncle Jack used to tell, was that if he was down on the reserve and the police came down, safest place for him to hide was in the cemetery. He'd take a dash into the cemetery and just lay flat on the ground until the police went away, because he was not allowed to come to the reserve because his dad was non-native. So therefore he's non-status, I guess, is what they later determined, that category of our people. You didn't have a band number, or you were not a registered Indian, so therefore you were, you didn't fit here, and he didn't fit too well, too, in the white community.
We often really laugh about the lodges in the theater here, because there was a man that stood at the door. You upstairs, if you were a native person, we had to go upstairs, and you know, you guys go down here, but the native people go upstairs. And later on, I don't know when, it changed that they had to pay more to go upstairs. And we could go downstairs for less.
We couldn't sit up on top with the white people. We had to go down below From the time we got on the boat, we didn't see the light of day till we're up in Rivers Inlet. So we couldn't enjoy the trip and look at the scenery or go up on deck. So my grandparents would pack food for us because we couldn't go up to the dining room. If they had a dining room, I don't know if they did. But we would have to, I remember, and I always remember that, was being where the baggage area is. And that's where we camped for the duration of the trip. And I don't know how long it took, if it was 2 days or 3 days to get to Rivers Inlet. But I always remember these big, I call them pistons, I guess that's what they are, and go, all the way for 3 days, that's all you heard. It was around that time that kids were taken away to the residential school.
I guess the Indian agent and the priest came around notifying the people on reserves along the coast here that they'll be coming to pick up children at the age of 6 and bringing them to the residential school in Sechelt.
My Aunt Elsie got very sick in the residential school and she died, and that was the reason why my grandmother refused to send me to the residential school. So they stayed away quite often, stayed away from the main village, because the priests would come and sometimes along with the police to pick up kids to take them to the residential school.
My mom was a very stubborn woman, and she kept me home. She couldn't see the need for her children to go to school right away. So I was kept home till I was 12 years old. The teachers, the nuns, they were all nuns in Sechelt school, where they didn't want any native language spoken. It was pretty hard because for us that just came from the reserves, always spoke our language, and a lot of times you get a slap on the head, and wondering what for. Here we've said an Indian word. Took a while to catch on to that and try not to talk, but I was very fortunate that all my uncles and aunts were old already, and my grandparents. When we came home in the summertime, that's all we spoke. And going through school, forgetting, I can't understand some people my age that have forgotten it altogether, where if it was scared out of them or what. But I never ever lost it, my brother, my sister, and myself. We never ever lost our language. It was really hard for a long time, and I had grandmothers in Sechelt that lived across the road, and we were not allowed to talk to them. It was really hard for us to see Granny Janet and not able to say something, you know. How are you today? Or they'd want to come up too, but they grew up in that situation. They were in the residential school, so they knew the rules. They try not to get us into trouble.
It segregated me and my mother, and she also went to boarding school, so it affected all of us. Just losing the language, the culture, you forget who you are. So when you come back home, and I guess maybe that's the identity problem that people are having, they hold blame on their family members for not keeping them home. Because my family sure does. My sister blames my mom for sending her. I blame my sister for not looking after me while I was there.
But my dad and mom said, you're not going. So all the people that not letting their children go, they all took off before September. And then we start with Howard Island, go there for the summer, and gather our food. And then after that we go to Savory and stay there, camp there, in the other island. Then when we reach there, it's going on September, the priest's going to come and take us away. So we never come home during September. I went to Okover and Sredo Inlet to dry the fish. We stayed there till before Christmas. Then we come home. So that's why I didn't go to residential school.
She said the Almighty gave us children to look after and raise. And she didn't like the idea of someone else doing it.
That was the hardest part in affairs. Wouldn't let us send our kids to a public school. Just send them to a Sechelt or Mission or whatever. And we say, no, we can't send them there. We went to a meeting. We tried to get the two boys to go to school in Brooks. We had to fight for it. So go to meetings. We don't want him to go to a residential school. So we kept on going, seeing the principal, going to meeting.
Nice work, Susan.
We did this to open it up.
I didn't know.
I remember that because I had to fight for it.
Carly's in.
Our language is now implemented right from preschool and kindergarten right up to grade 12, and I think that's excellent.
The ripe old age of the mid-40s came and I got the job, and from grade 1 to 3 we just did it orally, and 4 and 5 we started to write it some, and had the kids write it, and gee, what's going on here, I ran all around the world and came back, and here it is, It was so nice to hear the little ones coming out with it and going home and teaching their parents what they're learning in school, and
We went through a phase in time, or a period in time, where governments and the education system and all those things tried to take that away from us and make us like everybody else. The whole notion of assimilation, and that it wasn't successful.
Chalice, Moss, Theatrice,
I teach Indian language and tell my stories.
He went down on his haunches there, and I could see his little babies come out around the other side of the blackberry bush, and I thought, oh Jesus. So we're backing up and we're sneaking back, and the bear's coming out. He's flicking dirt, dust all over the road. He's shaking and he's clacking his teeth. We got far enough around the corner where I was going to tell my friend, don't run, whatever you do, don't run. And I looked, and he was already gone. He ran. My dog happened to be with me. He ran around the other side of the big barn that was there, and kept the bear from coming towards me. He was running around the bear. The bear was standing up and swatting at the dog. Couldn't get the dog because he was really fast. That gave me enough time to get away. It marauded us for about 3 days, trying to get into the cabin. Digging out of the cabin, pushing on the door, in the window in the middle of the night. So he says, that's it. We called conservation, and they told us to pick all the berries in the area. We're going, you're kidding. We're in this big berry orchard, and there's like 900 pounds of berries around. I said, forget this guy. I'm going on to get my gun. So when I got my gun, the next day we woke up in the morning, and there it was, right on the porch, looking in the window. You could see the breath of the bear's nose on the glass. That's it. I opened the door and blasted it. The bear's now a trophy rug. The bear's in my stomach. That's one of my scary stories.
I really feel that life is what you make it. You have to make the best of what you have each day. To blend the two worlds, our world as First Nations people, not to let it go, always keep that going as well. I think that's what gives young people today that pride in who they are, to know where their people came from. I think it's really important to document what we remember today so that the young people will understand their culture better rather than to be ashamed of where they were coming from. And that's happened for too long, that you were made to feel inadequate because you were a second-class citizen. And we don't want that anymore for our children. We want our children to be equal to the rest of the other people.
Talk about something besides your cat.
Tripping. Oh, watch it, you get dropped off.
ones myself that are growing up, and who's going to look after them? We're getting old. We're not that strong anymore. We just tell their stories. You'll be the one. That's what I'm telling my sons. You'll be the next one elder, and you got to learn this, and you're going to be teaching your granddaughter, your great-granddaughter, all those things. You have to learn. So for the ones that are going to school, they should keep on going and learn. And the other way, they got to learn the Indian way. Yeah, so they'll pass it on to the new generations, I call it, yeah. To remember the old people that were teaching us this and that, telling us this and that. So they have to remember that. If they don't, the village is just going to go down. Nobody's going to do all the things what they used to do. Yeah. They'll go the other way. I'll say they'll go the white man's way. Yeah.
Well, my mother, Violet, is the one who's my greatest teacher, I guess. She taught me a lot of stuff that I carry on today. And just before she passed on, I was learning how to make baskets from her. Cedar root baskets and spruce root baskets. I just was learning how to make the bottom, and then she got too sick, and that's one of my goals, is to finish that baby basket along with an elder who taught her, Agnes McGee. Agnes taught my mom how to make baskets, and that's who I've learned from too.
I'm trying to split it.
Her and Catherine Blaney. And they're excellent teachers, Agnes and Catherine. They're our expert basket weavers, as well as Mary George in Sliammon.
And Mary wouldn't give up. And just stand and she'll look for the window.
And I'm trying to learn as much as I can from them because, well, I hate to say it, but you know, they're not going to be around much longer, and that's what Agnes told me. You better learn as much as you can from me. She said that.
The one basket that's still in my possession belonged to my grandmother's great-grandmother, generations old.
I want to be able to finish that baby basket with Agnes. She taught my mother, and that's very important to me.
I feel very strongly that we're not far from the spirits of our ancestors. To me, they are there. Here is where I belong. Here is where my children belong. And here is where my ancestors are buried, as far back as the story goes.
Our rights and title exist throughout our territory, and an agreement has never been reached with government as to how they come to claim interest in our territory as well. And so what we're trying to do in treaty is resolve that issue and have our rights and our title, I guess, expressed through the treaty in a way where we reached agreement with government to be very clear on what it is that the Sliammon people have in terms of rights and title. I remember as a young boy climbing the sandbanks and climbing up to the top and just seeing this humongous ocean playground in front of us that was ours, and watching the boats and other people share in this beautiful land that we own.
Today's world, this is called an archaeological site, but it's still the connection of the land for the Salish people. This site can be from 1,000 years to at least 5,000 years old. A midden site is a combination of things. It spells out the activity, the history of the Salish people. It could have artifacts below it. It could have burial sites below it. It's been impacted. As you can see, we are currently on a residential lot. In other words, it's private land, but it still has an underlying title to it. We call it the Aboriginal title to the lands. No. And that's always going to be there. We speak about Aboriginal title. Why do we speak about Aboriginal title? Because we were the first ones in these areas, you know, from in the historical way of looking at things. This is what we call a fish trap, and this is to collect herring, herring roe, or whatever salmon enters into the pond.
And so this trap was used for all different species of the gen, like the salmon,
the gen,
the sockeye, and
the gen,
spring.
yeah, tla'amin. Skids were used to keep the bottom of a dugout from stripping all the wood and the whiskers off it. That's why you clear it away from the barnacles. This was created by a large group of people. The skids and the traps, it's the connection to the land. What we're talking about here is more than 800 people. We're talking about maybe 20 to 30,000 of the Salish people that existed in the area. That's what this is. You know. So it's very significant.
I had a researcher contact me where she found out the neglect of the governments in taking it away from us. They stole from us. It was stolen. And the report is so damning against the government that they refuse to even acknowledge Sliammon.
So was that statue far up this way?
Further over to that point over there. Some said it looked like a woman that was sitting there with a little one in front of her, and was grooming the child. Grooming the child in front of her. And someone one day decided they wanted to move that big rock away, and they got one of our people to go and explain to to them what this rock was about, and they thought it was the most interesting story or whatever they wanted to do with it. They attempted to move it away, and it tipped over and broke. So it's no longer there, unfortunately, but it was a real landmark that watched for the travelers coming up or coming from the other direction. Quanahanem.
Quanahanem?
That means like a watch person or a person on watch, watching the traffic, so to speak.
And you always hear worldwide, Canada-wide, about disturbance of archaeological sites, and like Oka, they wanted to build a golf course over their traditional burial site, and we have this happening to us for the past hundreds of years, and we can't do nothing about it.
And I think some of our people are confused even now about that. I hear criticisms about why we're not doing anything to stop the logging trucks going by every day, or why we're not, stopping the big commercial fish vessels that are out here fishing. And the average person doesn't understand that our only role in control legally right now, or used to be only the Indian Reserve, right? That was where we had any say and control over it. Even then, the ultimate authority lied with the IA. And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand in our community. And I don't know if it's because they don't want to understand that. They don't want to believe that that's how our world really is, that INAC is, they call all the shots in our lives from birth to death, And I think maybe that's the problem, is that people just can't comprehend that that can be true, And that's why they don't want to accept it. They don't want to believe that we can't stop anything happening in our territory.
I see us in the way we're living now, on reserve. Even that word to me it's so, it's like being fenced in. And I think people wonder, the non-native people or people in general that have never lived on reserve, that have never been an Indian, would, disagree with that. They would say, what more do you want? You get everything for free. Well, we don't get everything for free. Things are, it's a struggle. If I want to start a business, I have to go to Indian Affairs to get permission from them, because where I'm sitting doesn't belong to me. It's reserved for me. This house I've paid for, and it's still not mine.
In dealing with our issues in terms of the unresolved land question, that there are three options. One is legal action and trying to find a legal angle to regain control of our lands and resources, which other First Nations have tried. The second is direct action, trying to take back by force of some sort, demonstrations of civil disobedience, what are perceived as civil disobedience, in making statements around our lands and resources. And the third is negotiation. I think Sliammon is considered traditionally a peaceful nation, and I think that has somewhat helped our positioning in the treaty process, because our approach at negotiations has been one where we're willing to talk and try and find out where the differences are in issues and find ways to resolve them. I think that the idea of negotiations has to be one where the parties treat each other with some level of respect. And I think Sliammon is known for that. And we've always tried to be good hosts, if you will, when government comes to our community, and act in a decent and respectful manner when we're in the government's house, if you will. Try and find creative ways to do things in a way that isn't perhaps demonstrating a lack of control or discipline at a negotiating table, but learning to negotiate in a way that was respectful, but also forceful.
All we got is all the traps, but there's no salmon, no herring, no fish. Everything's depleted.
Right.
Yeah, by
Polluted from the water,
yeah,
the mill.
the mill industry. It's changed considerably. Our environment's changed. The history, you know, like the history of this particular area speaks for itself. So what more can we do here to disturb it or to, you know, debate on what it really means? It's very historical, yeah.
My feelings are always mixed on it when I go out on the land or out in the water to see our territory, because on one hand you see how magnificent it is, and on the other hand you see how everybody else but us is using it and sometimes abusing it.
I'm a very big critic of the way our resources have been managed by the provincial government and the federal government, for that matter. You look at what's happened to the salmon. I've seen the consultation of DFO, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I've seen their process and it doesn't work. I've seen the way they consult, and it doesn't work. The province in the area of forestry, I see who benefits. I know who's getting rich. I know about legal obligation to manage properly renewable resources, and it doesn't work. It needs to work. It needs to take into consideration significant groups like First Nations, who have been here for thousands and thousands of years.
Fish are just pretty well poor out there. You get a few here and there, and then it disappears. And you're getting up 5 o'clock in the morning here, there till dark. It takes a lot out of you. It's traditional to the people to go out and gather the herring. That's gone now. About that same time ago, about 14 years ago, they had a big commercial opening out here right in the front of the Strait of Sliammon, where they took out the resident herring. And we haven't had a spawn here since. The salmon stocks here are declining because of that. As you see now, you go out and go fish out here on any given day, you're lucky if you get anything, because the food sources are gone now. They've moved off. So if you start playing with Mother Nature and the ecosystem, things change. You go and cut too many trees, the animals move on, and they're harder for us to catch, that kind of a thing. Like a good example would be Cortez, where I used to go and hunt up there all the time. You go up there now, you wouldn't recognize it because there's so much development. And this is where the deer used to be all the time. I'm going, hey, where's my road? It's gone.
House there.
And their yards are all fenced in, you can't hunt there anymore, so you got to find new places, right?
Clams, logging is one of the top things that kept our people going throughout the years, and I don't want to lose the clam industry like we've lost the salmon industry.
The way my ancestors did things, they did it right. And I think government, provincial and federal, need to look at the way it was done. And they need to use that as the standard they need to get to.
We were our own, basically, conservationists, where we left something for another group to come in. We move on to another camp, we utilize that area, and move around until we had our food stored for the winter, and stay wherever that particular area was that you were at that particular time. They utilized the area so that the one area wasn't actually overpicked of clams or more bear or deer taken out of one spot. They'd move on to another spot.
Personally, our family went to Cooper Island, Denman Island, Lasqueti, back here to Sliammon, over to Savory, up to Marina Inlet, Cortez Island. And by the time we went back and did the cycle again, it was ready to harvest again. We did that year round. And because they put us into areas, we can't do that anymore. And that was because they didn't come in and negotiate to all the different bands and says, look, we're going into this because I guess they were just trying to implement their rules and regulations of how to take control of the commercial fishery.
You catch any particular cod, like an example would be a 20-kilogram cod. That particular salmon or cod is about probably 70, 80 years old. So when you catch one of these cod, now you have a little more respect for it. It's like pulling up your grandfather, right? And it takes that long to grow back. And a cod has to be at least 23 inches to spawn. And 15 years old, it takes them that long to get that big. So you have a little more respect for these fish when you take them. You don't take what you can catch. You take a couple and you leave the rest alone. And you come back and there's always something there for you, next year.
I think people have come too late to realize that it's not right, that we're wasting so much. We're taking from the land and we're giving nothing back. Our people knew that. Our people knew that from hundreds of years ago, and the earth was fine. When we go out and dig roots from a cedar tree, you thank the Creator for that. And I think that's where we're gone downhill, is that we just take things and we don't give back. We don't appreciate. We don't give thanksgiving. You give thanks to the ocean for giving you food. When the herrings came in, it was almost like a ceremony. People went down the beach and they welcomed the herring for coming into Sliammon. When people went hunting, they shared what they got. You didn't go to your neighbor and sell it. You helped one another. So people up north of us knew about this area, and in turn our people from Sliammon went up to Toby and went up to Butte and shared in their resources as well. There was no boundaries, you just had relatives there and you got permission from them. Now you can't even go to that beach and dig clams because someone's going to tell you, get off my beach. It's ridiculous. It's so different these days. You're a trespasser on your own land.
We have to look at it with our right and title to the land. Like right now, we do have right and title to the land. We can exercise it anytime we want. Fishing, we've always had the right. We've always had the right. It's just exercising that right.
I think that we have rights, and we need to say, these are our rights. And they know those are our rights. I mean, and they just try to chisel them away, little bit by little bit, but they're protected, and we know they're there, and they know they're there, but they just, like, it's gonna take a treaty, it's gonna take some hard negotiations, and something written and something passed in their system of law for us to at least have a document to go back to and say, well, you said it here, so.
I am a member of Sliammon and I want to be represented and I want to be able to participate in a commercial fishery. It's my Aboriginal right, it's my inherent right.
Two sums dooms jam. Two shams dooms jam.
There's good times and bad times that come with it. The winds, the rain, the snow. But the best time is during the spring, and that's when a lot of people in our community go out and they catch the clams. They go out and harvest it, bring it back home, and dry it in between the tides. So it works out both ways. We're doing it for a living, and we're doing our communal right as well.
I started digging when I was 10 years old, I guess, and I still dig to this day. I have a commercial license to do it, so I guess a little bit of our culture mixed in with the commercial part.
The resources we do have right now, we need to manage them whether we have a treaty or not. Otherwise, be left behind and have the resources that we have right now be extracted by people from out of the area.
I don't know, I think it'd be better if we could start managing our own resources. It's been so long, 200 years now. It's time for a change, and we got to be able to manage and be employed, make money for our families.
Oh, oh, yeah. Oh, 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 yeah.
I think that stewardship, the whole responsibility of being stewards of your own land, can be a daunting challenge, but I think it may not be as hard as we think if we just think about having a presence on the land. And from that, what I mean is that our people to being just involved in the activities that take place within our territory.
Well, the guys here are really good. They just love the work they do, and every one of those little fish eggs are like their babies, and you know they really care to make sure that things are going well and that we're growing more fish.
We've been here 25 years, going on 26 years now, and we pumped out over 27 million salmon. We're number one. We're one of the number one hatcheries on the coast. We're small, but we're effective.
I don't know if the average person thinks that, you know, we're just reaping all the benefits from these hatcheries and nobody's benefiting but the native people, you know, and that's definitely not true. The fish gets pumped out there into the ocean where we have no control and say over what happens to it from there. The benefit is mostly other people. And we pump out this fish into the ocean, and then the sports fishermen, the commercial fishery, and everybody else harvests it.
If this place was shut down, we estimated about 3 to 5 years, the fish in our creek would become endangered.
Yeah.
That's because of the amount of fish that they've taken in the commercial and in the sport.
Yeah. You know, the government keeps overfishing, and the resources keep getting depleted, and the one and only hope is that the hatcheries are pumping new fish into the ocean. So I can't understand the reasoning behind cutting back hatcheries. It doesn't make any sense to me. So we can do what? All get into the fish farm business and grow pretend fish, you know? I think some of us prefer the wild fish.
Whereas right now we seem to be excluded from most things that happen. We don't hold forest tenure. We don't have a commercial recreation tenure. We're not running businesses, you know, out on the land and doing different things. So our limited access to our own resources again is creating a situation where we've been removed from that stewardship role. Now, if that was returned through opportunity, through different kinds of access to tenures and business activities and so on, you know, people just being out there on the land would create a presence, and because they're Sliammon people, we would be able then to have influence over decisions that happen within our territory, because we have an interest and we have to be considered and consulted.
I don't want to see us stay where we are. I want to see that there are changes, there are people employed, we're involved in our territory, we're in the logging industry, we're in the fishing industry, or in the tourism industry, and we're involved.
Like, I think we need business, and I think we need to do it our way. Like, programs that come in don't succeed usually. Like, it needs to be driven by our community.
We do have people who are strong in the area of developing businesses. I think that's an area of big opportunity, is the development of small business for individuals within our community.
I don't think that the negotiation process at this point is a level playing field. I think that as a small table, we come in at a big disadvantage. I think that the governments come to the table with a preconceived notion of what the treaty should look like, and it causes a lot of problems at the table. I don't think that they respect the interests or the rights and title that the Sliammon people have. I think it becomes an issue of trying to convince us that what they're putting on the table is right for us. And so that's very problematic. It causes a lot of trouble.
Well, I think the danger with the provincial government is that they have a lot to lose. They have an awful lot to lose in this process. Their authority, their power, their jurisdiction in some cases, their land base. They have a lot to lose. And you look at how many First Nations there are in British Columbia that all want the same. They all want to be recognized to have their role, their say in their territory. So if you look at that and you think, if you were the provincial government and you had 147 First Nations knocking on your door saying, we want our rights back, we want our land back, and we want authority, I'd be scared too, you know.
There are many times when we get very frustrated, very pissed off about what government is trying to do, what it is that they're trying to sell you, what it is that they're trying to convince you is good for you. It becomes a difficult situation because you often wonder, where do you go from there? And I think those times are times when you wonder whether or not this will work.
I personally have never ever agreed that we should have to borrow money to negotiate land that was stolen from us in the first place, or authority that was taken from us in the first place. I feel the federal government should be completely funding the whole process on our behalf. They're fiduciary. They took away our right to govern ourselves and look after ourselves. And then they walked away and said, well, you're on your own now. Borrow money if you want to get into this treaty process. So, the financial cost is high, and it is a problem because the community is very aware that there's a cost to negotiating treaties and that the clock is ticking.
The land was ours. Why do we have to borrow money to prove it's our land? To me, it's mind-boggling. It doesn't make sense to me. We lived here all, right from day one. Our people from way back. We had all the customs. Now we got to borrow money to prove that. It doesn't make sense to me.
The emotional toll is quite high, as far as maintaining your course and standing your ground and trying to convince your own people that there is hope, that we are going to get a treaty, that, we're not going to do this for 8 years and then end up with nothing at the end of the day, So it's hard to continue to promote that message when you're being stalled with, and it's beyond your control. I think that's the hard part is explaining to the community why it's taken so long. But it's not a small thing either. It's not just implementing a program. We're talking about changing our world.
Right now we're just sitting and fighting amongst each other with the funds that we get from DIA, that little bread and crumbs that they give us.
I guess if we talk about conflict in the community and how far back does it go and its origins, I do believe that the origins of it are because of how we've been asked to administer our own poverty.
I think that most people don't recognize that the root of the conflict is in the system itself. That it's not about individual people, it's about the fact that we're living under this Indian Act system that totally doesn't work. Like, it's just, like, not feasible.
And from that, what develops is families against families, because in certain situations, one family has the ability to administer programs which other families perceive will benefit only their families.
We're within the Indian Act, where we have every 2 years we have a election for chief and council. That's something that we cannot get away from. Once you start something, the 2 years up, and the next chief and council, maybe they won't go with it. That's the whole shame part of it. Our DIA, our Indian Act system.
And we're in a small community, and if there's no mechanisms for accountability and for transparency, then certain people take advantage. And even if they're not taking advantage, there's a suspicion that they're taking advantage because there's no safeguards in place. So people blame each other, and then it turns into a family thing, because of course you're going to defend the people you love, and they don't realize that it's like a system problem.
The world we live in is artificial to us in our community. We weren't meant to all live like cattle on a reserve and be on top of each other and in each other's business all the time. Historically, our people lived out on the land, and they weren't always in each other's faces. And, you know, they knew how to get along. They knew who fished where and what river, and how to take care of the resources, and how to be family. They would come together in the winters and spend their time together. So, you know, we all know if you don't live at home and, you know, you come home, you really enjoy your time with your family when you've been away. Well, when you're always in each other's faces, how can you miss each other, you know?
I don't like the system we're in right now. I said when I was chief, DIA, I got no use for. Majority of our money is sunk into DIA. They're all employed, you know, they go home every 2 weeks with a big paycheck, and, well, we got welfare systems and things down here.
We haven't changed much in our life as Indian Act Band. We're kind of dependent on Indian Act. We have our band office. We have a way of life, and that hasn't changed much, and it won't change much, I don't think. You know, if we stay under the Indian Act, we just plod along and wait for the government to come and help us. And if we get away from that and start finding our own way, then we'll move forward in leaps and bounds.
I don't think settling for 3 to 5% of our land is a fair negotiation.
If we're going to negotiate for land, let's negotiate for everything.
To go into self-government now I don't think we're ready.
If we don't negotiate, participate in the BC Treaty process, we'll continue to live under the Indian Act. We'll have to be content with watching the resources go out of the traditional territory without Sliammon benefiting in any significant way, meaningful way. We'll have to be content with that.
If we don't have monetary wealth, we have the wealth of the forest and of the sea. And that's not going to wait for us to be ready. The government and industry aren't going to wait for us to be ready. Like, we just have to step in and figure out how to do it along the way. And everyone makes mistakes in early days of forming governance, or it takes a lot of tries, right? But we can't afford to wait. There's going to be nothing left. And I mean, that sounds desperate, but the land defines us as a people. Like, all those things that we're losing are our identity. And so, I mean, as they're going, we're losing ourselves. And then what will we have? Like, it doesn't matter if we're not ready. We just have to step up and do it.
Yes. When there's such a division, so much hate, we're not ready for self-government. No. We're not ready for treaty.
No. No.
I'd like to see a treaty at another time when we prove we as a Sliammon community can come together and be one. There's a division in our community.
Sides pitted their elders on this side, elders on that side. The remarks going back and forth, you know. You think you only see that in a foreign country, you know. Yeah.
Through a vote we had in the past, the AIP was voted down, and that's a sad thing to see because it was so close, with the community being divided so much right now. It's what's holding things up. The whole community basically right now is held hostage.
There are times when the whole process just gets really frustrating, and you know, you just feel like leaving. Sometimes I feel like just leaving and going on and doing something else in the world besides living in this community, working for the community.
Even though our ancestors are gone, they were here long before us, and they've left their mark, and there are times we have to call on them to help us. My great-uncle became very sick after he'd lost a son, and he cried all the time, to the point that when he would go hunting, he would not catch anything. When he would go fishing, he would not catch anything. When his uncle, who was a medicine man, his name was Felix, from Belix, they called him. He was from Tla'amin. Felix said, "Your spirit has left you, and I've searched for it, and I have found your spirit. Your spirit is so far away from you. It's way up on the tip of the highest mountain up in Toba Inlet. That's where your spirit is sitting. If you want me to, if you cooperate with me, I'll work with you and bring your spirit back to you. If your spirit goes beyond that mountain to the other side, you are going to be gone." And he took him into a sweat lodge. Felix said, "By morning on that big maple tree, that's where the owl will bring your spirit. It'll be returned to you." So they sat all night in this little sweat, and sure enough, towards morning, they could hear the white owl, way far, but they could hear it. And it came closer and closer until it landed on that tree, and it just made that big sound that those white owls make. And he could just feel it go right through him like lightning. He was well after that. He got well.
people wonder why we're still moving forward when the vote was no. The no vote didn't mean the end of the process for us. It meant that the original offer, the original deal brought to Sliammon was not good enough.
Because I don't believe that people in Sliammon agree that we should simply stay under the Indian Act and focus our energies on our 6 small reserves, as opposed to taking our rightful place in society and reestablishing our link to the rest of our territory.
Deep down inside, everybody wants the same thing, and getting people to understand that living under the Indian Act and staying exactly the way we are is not going to bring those changes to us. It's not going to happen under the Indian Act. If anything, our world's going to get much more restricted. There's going to be much less to offer.
There's a delicate balance of trying to figure out whether or not we're benefiting from being in this process or whether or not we're wasting our time. But if we weren't considered a lead table, then I think we'd have a lot more problems in trying to convince ourselves that we should be in this process. Because at a minimum, we're able to leverage some opportunity to build capacity. I think we can look at capacity building as asking the question as to how we prepare ourselves to take on the added responsibility of basically just looking after ourselves and our lands and resources. At a more intimate level, if you will, it's about what happens with our people and getting our people ready to fill roles and responsibilities, perhaps. It's about preparing our people to think about things in a different way so that we can deal with issues in a context that would fit with us having the control of our own affairs. So at that level, I think it's really different for each person to try and figure out who they are and where they're at today and what it is that they want to do in the future and what it's going to take for them to prepare themselves to be able to do that.
I pray that I'm not like the people that are out there still bickering, fighting over petty little things. There's a bigger thing out there happening, change, and that's the treaty process, and we have to educate ourselves to get out there and learn, and I think that's the bottom line.
I think it's really important that we start getting people working together, start trusting each other again. We're such a small community. We, with arguing and fighting amongst each other, we're not going to move anywhere. We're going to be in limbo and staying where we are, and we don't want to do that. We want to move forward in a real positive way.
Bringing people together, whether it's in a meeting, whether it's family meetings, is what's going to make change. Because within those meetings, you brainstorm, you come to a conclusion. If not, you can see the vision of what's happening for the future.
It starts right from as a young person that you are a haiskaimil, and that's a person who's up and doing things in their community. You could be a young person in your 30s and 40s, and you've got the makings of a haiskaimil. You just don't become an elder when you're 65 and say, "Respect me, I'm an elder." You have to earn it. You have to live it. Be the role model. You have to set an example, and you have to have standards in life that earns you that title to be a respected elder.
I think that because it was a hereditary chieftainship, the person who was going to be chief would be taught from when they were born their roles, their responsibilities, their duties to the community and to everybody that they came in contact with. Like, as a leader, those are your responsibilities. And that person really does have those qualities of leadership that a hereditary chief would have.
Each family had a hegus before, and the hegus was the head man of the family, the head person. And each of those people were able to, speak to the chief on behalf of their family. Leadership really is families. They identify who the leader of their family is, who can speak on their behalf. And that takes us back to a traditional way of doing things.
That's like going back to when things did work, hereditary chiefs. You've sent out people to speak on your behalf within your house.
Every family has a leader that talks for the family. We have to spread that word around and get away from the voting from board members and things like that. And it'll work that way.
At one level, we are a collective, but on another level, as a community, we all have individual responsibility to make up that community.
I can remember just Mom and them saying, you got to get up and speak. You can't just sit there. You got to let people know that you actually have a brain. You're not just living and breathing and just sitting there taking up space. So, she wanted me to be able to speak to people and let them know how I felt, I guess.
Because we don't hear it enough, I think. That's the problem. We don't hear enough what is said and how you're supposed to carry yourself. We hear too many negative things, and we don't need that.
Sue and I go back a long ways. Ever since we were children, she'd always been my friend. Talk about all our concerns, about our community and about our children and about everything in general. And now that we've solved and all those problems and talked about all those issues, we say goodbye. So I don't know who I'm going to talk to now. Because I think we shared the same kinds of beliefs, the same standards. Yeah, I will miss her. I think she's one of the few that still held the same beliefs as I do. We're born one day and we'll grow up and give life. Just like nature. So when my children, when I'm no longer here, I hope that they will carry those same beliefs and that they one day too will be grandparents and great-grandparents and carry on the traditional beliefs that I carry close to my heart. remember my great-grandmother and going to sleep in her bed, in her feather comforter. Our people made their own bedding. And the men back then went and shot ducks and plucked, my grandfather plucking the feathers from these ducks. And it must have taken a long, long time to gather all those feathers. And of course we ate the duck, and that was really good soup. I haven't had duck soup for years now. But we used to have duck soup, and that was nice, and then the feathers were being saved. Just watching my grandfather doing that, plucking, burning the fuzz from the duck on the bonfire and scraping it, and it just gave it a really neat flavor to the soup too, that kind of a smoky flavor to it. Just doing things with family. You made it fun. It was fun.